I was eternal, bottom line. Now, I'm on the other side, and you're thinking to yourself, but your thoughts aren't like what we have in the flesh. I mean, if you can get your head around eternity and having a brush with eternity, then that's basically the state I was in. My name's Holland Church. I had a near-death experience before I entered kindergarten as a child. I got run over by a car. That dent in my skull is where the differential of the car hit my head. I don't know if you know what a differential or not is. The back axle of a car, there's that bump in the back axle. That's called the differential. That's what clipped my head, and it took the side of my head off, and I had a brush with the other side. Prior to that car accident, this is a few years before, when I was like a toddler, and I can only remember this prior to the accident. I took the lid off a garbage can. I was just maybe walking around my backyard. I lifted the lid up off a garbage can, and a bat was in the garbage can, and a bat came up and propped itself on the edge of the garbage can and looked right at me and then flew off. And as it flew off, I saw this figure above the tree line. It was like, I guess you could say that it was like a lady in a white dress, or you've seen those pictures of Mary. There was no distinguishable face. It was kind of like just a blurred piece of gray. And it was a silhouette of like a white, shady gray, shady white image like that. And it kind of said to me, but in a thought, like if I took a speck of light and threw it into your brain, it would like be a whole book basically. And what I got out of that thought is that you're about to become something for God, and there's nothing you can do about it. And as a kid, and then I'm just standing there with the lid of the garbage can. And the next thing I remember basically is I'm sitting in front of that car on my bike. You know, like sure, I had a little bit of a life prior to that, but I'm sitting in front of this car on my bike, and as a kid before kindergarten, and I have my hand out because the car's about to run me over. I was crossing the street on my bike. And I remember having a little conversation with myself. I'm like, that is a beautiful hood of the car. It looked like a Maserati. It had a nice rounded hump down to the grill. The grill was round at the front with like honeycomb kind of grill. So it was obviously some kind of a sports car. And I was sat there what felt like for a while having a conversation with myself. And then it all started clicking in that this is what that lady over the tree line, or that vision over the tree line, was preparing me for, and that this is where I'm at. And I'm sitting in front of that car, and the car ate me. No pain or nothing like that, but the car swallowed me up, and I was on the other side. As I was on the other side, it wasn't like what all the other near-death experiences that I've studied to this day were. Mine was more like I knew I was eternal. It's hard to explain that there's no up or down or left or right, but I could move up or down, left or right, but it wasn't that. It was more like eternity. I was eternal, bottom line. And it was darkness. But I was the darkness. I was complete dark. I guess you could say it was a mixture of light and darkness, but if you would put it on a color scale, it was black. It wasn't darkness as you know, we understand darkness to be. It was more like I was eternal. Bottom line. Now, I'm on the other side, and you're thinking to yourself, but your thoughts aren't like what we have in the flesh. I mean, if you can get your head around eternity and having a brush with eternity, then that's basically the state I was in. I guess you could say a soul, right? Like free from the flesh. Now, a speck of light, like a smaller than a pinprick, like you could say that it was above me or below me or around me, but way off in what you could say was the distance, a speck of light. And this prompted me to like, well, there's no point in just sticking around here wondering and talking to myself. So I decided to start moving. And it wasn't really basically towards that speck of light, but was the catalyst for movement, to be beyond that state of just existing, right? And I know that the near-death experience, there's tunnels and everything like that. They talk to angels and their loved ones, and they went through that. Maybe that's the light that I didn't go through. Maybe. But I kind of believe that it wasn't that, because it's different for everybody. I mean, what you're getting out of it. You're talking eternity. And that's something that a lot of people have a hard time getting their head around. So I'm going to leave it at that, because everybody's interpretation of eternity is going to be different. I believe that that's just because it's, if you think of God as being a physician, the great physician, he's operating on you until you're eternal. You have a broken arm, you're going to fix it, stuff like that. So I decided to start moving, and I moved right into my body lying there on the road. And there are people around me, and apparently they lifted a bunch of people that came to the scene. Apparently they lifted the car off me. There was enough people to lift the car up, the rear end, or even maybe the whole thing. I don't know. I never saw the car totally. And I'm on there on the road, and I started screaming, don't let them cut me open, because the only thing I knew about hospitals was operation, right? So what went through my head is, I'm going to the hospital right now. So I'm seeing scalpels, stitches, and stuff like that. Then I calmed down a little bit, and I'm lying there on the road, and a ring of people around me. And then there's this one guy in the neighborhood. He was kind of like a cripple. He walked with a gimpy limp. His name was Frankie. He was the only person that came out with a pillow, and he placed it under my head and told me to relax, that the ambulance was on its way. And I took in the situation pretty quickly, and yeah, okay, this is what I'm at. I'm on my way to the hospital. And in the ambulance, into the hospital. So back in the day, I'm 62 years old. So it's kind of, I guess you could say, in barbaric practices, but they were more realistic. So it was the family doctor that called in. So I didn't go, I think, to the hospital. I could have been in the hospital, or I could have been at the family doctor's office. Regardless of where I was, I'm on the table, and I woke up again as he was stitching my head up. So there was no anesthetic, because you don't have time anesthetic. You got to get this kid stitched up. That's how it was back in those days. And I woke up, and I obviously knew something was going on with the side of my head. I mean, he was stitching me, but he punched me. Knocked my lights right out, right away, just like that, which was the smart thing to do, because I wasn't under anesthetic. So they got me stitched up, and I woke up in a hospital bed, and I had the Band-Aid around my head. And, a couple days later, I was released, and I was home with the Band-Aid on my head. I went back to get my stitches out. And I'm at the doctor's office now, and I'm getting my stitches out. And I had this metal Hot Wheel in my hand, and I crushed it. I did. I literally crushed this thing so it fell apart in pieces, and it fell out of my hand. I've tried to do that my entire life again, to repeat that process. There's no way. That's just a piece of steel that crumpled in my hand. It was unreal. So I get the stitches out. Now I'm bumming around at home, and I'm a kid after this experience, and it's going through my head that this is what went down. I didn't share it with nobody. This is the first. I mean, I've said it to family, and I've said it to a few people here and there. Yeah, I had a brush with the other side, but I never shared the experience. And I planned it this way because of just, I was soaking up my environment. You have to remember that I had the mind of a child when I went under. I had the mind of a child when I see that thing over the tree lines. I mean, what did I do? My mind prepared me for getting run over by a car. I mean, if that's crazy, I mean, that's kind of a good crazy. And it's kind of like weird crazy too, if you think about it. So I went through a few sets of encyclopedias when I was a kid, and my parents stopped buying them for me because they were $200 a year. So I had a little bit of everything. And it's basically reading pictures too, right? So I had a little bit of knowledge, and then I just cut out. So I just kept to myself kind of until I knew that when I was 16, I was legal age to leave home. And I cut out on my own, and I basically studied politics and religion on my own, just word of mouth, observing, asking questions, see how the responses were from everybody, like walking in a church and listening and stuff like that. Then I became a truck driver, and I drove truck for a few years. And after that, I started becoming an animal in the truck because I wasn't even making eye contact with people no more. If you had paperwork for me, that's all that it was, which was a nice thing because I'm a road warrior. I come from the road. And then I climbed into a casino. I went back to school and became a multi-competent hospitality worker and got a job as a dealer. And I like the dealing job. was great. And I worked in a casino, and then COVID came and kind of got kicked in the boonies with it. And I moved to Newfoundland here, and I'm going to start a B&B for my pocket money in retirement to recoup from what COVID did. And that's basically where I'm at. So this is the stepping stone of me sharing my experience. And I mean, you can't sit here in an hour and ramble on about it. You can't even sit here in a day and ramble on about it. This is like, I mean, it's the other side. It's eternal. Now, I know the flesh has a lot of its shortcomings and blessings as well. And that's true. That's true enough. I mean, every human being knows that we live on the planet Earth, you know, and I mean, there's a sun, and outside of the heat of the sun, nobody really knows anything about. The scientists. I mean, space exploration, they go to a place in outer space, and by the time they get there, they say, oh, it's not what we thought it was, 99% of the time, right? That's space exploration, is we don't know until we get there now, right? But that's where we're at. I mean, what, in a galaxy? Outside of the heat of the sun, in a galaxy. And then outside the galaxy, there's all these other galaxies with these, what they believe to be black holes in the middle of each galaxy. I mean, if you ask me, I think that the planet Earth is the only planet in all the multiverses that life exists on. And you can mathematically can't rule me out. I mean, there was a book that I read on, it was a layman's mathematical terms of our solar system. If there is life out there, it has to be within our solar system. It's just it's too much for the human mind to comprehend on the outside of our solar system. If there is life, I mean, it wouldn't be able to get here, for one thing. It's just too much. So to put things into perspective, I mean, there's life, and the question that humanity, I think, is struggling with right now is, or isn't there a God? People are walking around just believing that there's a God. You have to believe. Well, is there or isn't there? I had a brush with the other side, so I know that eternity exists, right? And I mean, there's other aspects of my near-death experience, but I guess they could be brought out. I'm going to write a book. I can type. So I'm going to write a book, and I should be able to crunch it all into that book. I mean, you've got the time to sit down there and type. You can put it all in there, right? But it's not rocket science. You can go on and on and on about it, but you're not going to take away from what it is. It's not a big thing. It's a small thing. It's life. It's life eternal, right? So I guess the professionals can ask questions and I can answer them. It's just that's what I saw. That's what I experienced, right? And one thing I would like to, I say it to myself all the time. How can a child say to itself, okay, I'm just going to kick back and I'm going to relax until I'm older, and then I'm going to start talking about this before I'm in even kindergarten, to make that choice without any advice? But like, who can you talk to, right? If you have a near-death experience when you're a kid and you come out of that, I mean, sure, you hear kids, but they're talking about their parents. I saw an angel. I was talking to Jesus. I never had any of that. I went to a church and a pastor told me that I had an out-of-body experience, and that's about it. And I said, well, yeah, but this is the way it went down for me. So you can't take away that I had a brush with this, I guess you could say, an angel or whatever it was over the tree line that tapped me into the spirit to prepare me for being run over by a car, right? But I was alone. I never saw other people. I never saw angels. I guess God already talked to me. There's no reason for me to respond. When I did come to my senses in my backyard as a kid, I did look up and I said, hey, why did you put me back? I was eternal. Now I'm a kid in my backyard and I'm in this flesh. So why'd you put me back? And the only thing that, whether I answered myself or whether it was divinity, I got the impression that because I've given you a life, whether that was my own mind or the spirit speaking to me, I don't know, right? But that's what sets my NDE apart from every other one that I've heard. I'm not saying that I'm special or nothing like that. This has probably occurred in other people. I imagine so. before kindergarten, I read in an encyclopedia that the scientists did experiments with a dog. It was a Labrador. And the Labrador was on a table, and there was a person that was on the verge of death on the table, and they made a measurement. The measurement of the dog stayed the same, whereas the measurement of the human body had a slight percentage less on the point of that. So, I mean, this has been being studied for a long time, right? And I guess, I don't know. I guess that's question time, or I would have to start writing a book. There's really no big spiel. If you thought of yourself as a robot that woke up in the world and decided to sit down for 1,000 years and continue the conversation after 1,000 years ended, that's basically what I am. Basically, my spirit has just kept to itself, and my decision was to open up at this point in life. I'm 62 years old, so there was no cell phone. I still had black and white TV. There was no cell phone. There was no computer. So I was in a public school in Canada, Downsview, Ontario. And every morning in that public school, we would stand and listen to the national anthem, O Canada, and the Lord's Prayer, Our Father. And that's kind of, after the NDE, that's kind of my experience. And that kind of ended when I got into grade 5, I think, that they stopped doing that. Or when I was just stepping into high school, which was grade 7, 6 or 7. But I was the kind of student that did nothing. If I got homework, I would throw it in the bushes on the way home. So I knew religion. I was baptized in a Catholic church, but we never really attended, or anything like that. We celebrated Christmas. And I did know the Lord's Prayer from school. And my mother taught it to me as well. So I did pray that prayer. But my prayer would usually break off to as, I've mentioned it to other people too. If you think of God, you got to think of the word Father. Your Father knows when you're lying to him, right? And if you're not honest with your Father, then you're making it up as you go along. If something's bugging me, I say, that's not right. That is bugging me. I don't like it, and I'll never like it. And somebody can't dictate to you your relationship with God. Or is there or isn't there a God? Okay. Is there or isn't there a God? Let's find out. What? You got to walk around, you have to believe? No, Dad, either you're real or you're not. Bottom line. I was being bombarded by the world. You still had TV, still had news, still had books, right? Still had people talking around me. So what I did as a child is I put my watch. I had a Timex watch, a blue one. And I knew that in life, you got to have a nice watch. So I put this watch to my ear each night, and I fell asleep with the ticking. And that basically turned my brain, because the mind of a child is looking at those little components in the watch. So that's how I survived to this day. Basically, my brain is like a watch ticking. It's kind of separate from what it's being bombarded by. I kind of protected it as a kid. I had to protect my brain because it was being bombarded by a lot of stuff. Religion, war, there's truth, there's dogma, religion is false, cults, all the evil things. The first headline I read as a child was not Canada's #1 killer was child abuse. So I come across it as a know-it-all, but I don't know it all. I'm just kind of like mimicking. I'll feed back to you what you feed to me information-wise, but if you want to converse, it has to be from the spirit. I have a spirit. I've contemplated all my life. I know that's a horrifying thing to say, but I can say, say you're talking to your father, I could say to my father right now, that is, I'm out of here. There's no point for me to be enduring this. It's that simple. It's that easy to just, it's like, think of your body and your bones, flesh as something that's been given to you that you don't have taste for at all. Well, you're just going to throw it away. And if, I know it's a horrifying thing to think, but if you think more like eternally, it's not. I had a brush with the other side. My spirit had a taste of eternity. I didn't talk with angels or nothing like that. I just had a brush with eternity. Had a brush with the other side of life, of our body and our bone and our organs. They believe that your brain is like an organ, like your heart, your liver, or your lung. Your brain is an organ. Yeah, there's electrical impulses in there, but I read in a book by one of the smartest people in the world that your brain is like an organ, that they believe that there's thoughts, I guess, swirling around your head, and it picks and acts upon thought, but it's not making those thoughts, it's choosing. Like right now, if you think there's thoughts swirling around your head, your brain has just picked one to act upon as an organ in your body. I think of myself as a dragon, actually. I mean, I'm not roaring around breathing fire or nothing like that, but you hear stories of dragons swimming in an ocean all alone. If I live beside the ocean, and that's one of the reasons I do, is because when I look at water and I see water, I picture it as my ocean. There's not another living creature in that ocean other than I want it to be there, kind of thing. That's how I feel if I was to paint a picture of myself. I could move left like that, like a serpent or a dragon swimming in the ocean. That's kind of how I was an avid swimmer since a baby. I think my dad was naval. He was in the Navy. So when I was a baby, he probably threw me in the water. That's what they used to do back in the day. As a baby, you're born with the instinct to swim. And if you haven't brush with that, you just swim like a fish from the beginning. I've been able to swim like a fish from the beginning. That's kind of, if you painted a picture of that, of myself, that's kind of what I think I would be. So be able to anywhere in the ocean. There's nothing saying that I can't go left or right, I guess. I don't know what I look like. I guess my spirit hasn't had a mirror yet, but that's the painting that my brain can pick. You are eternal. Like as I started to move and I'm listening to all the NDE, well, maybe that moving, I could have kept moving into that light and it could have been a different story. You know, like, I mean, you can map that out on my head at a doctor. You can do the scale and they can measure that chip out of my skull into my temple. So I don't think that you can describe being eternal. I think it's more or less that you're going to be it. And that all these near-death experience stories, it's very crazy. Like I say, if you listen to 100 near-death experiences and you had like your two doctors and two doctors listened to 100 near-death experiences and then they collaborated on what they got from that, I think they would either be in denial of the personal message or have different points of view. But their brain is going to make of it what their brain makes of it. Other than the scientific stuff like that dog experiment. Didn't work out like that for me. I guess if you could say if I was, okay, like I'm a boy, I'm a kid, right? And I decided, like I put my watch to my ear and then I decided at that young age, okay, I'm going to just start rolling with the punches. And then when I'm old enough, I'm just going to stand up and either fight back or just stand up and brush it all off. So this is just before COVID. I got out of my truck and I worked at the casino and I started standing up then, but I didn't stop rolling with the punches. I kept getting rolled. You know what I mean? Like if somebody's pushing you and rolling you like a snowball, I stood up. I just kept getting pummeled. I just kept getting pushed and I've got my feet I've got my footing now. This I planned to do about 4 or 5 years ago, but I just kept rolling. And I think I'm not, things happen for a reason. Yeah, things happen for a reason, but I don't lean on that as much as a gospel truth thing. I'll share something with you. I got right here in my boots. They're polished, taken care of. These are Boulay, and these are custom, my own heel on there, military cleats. These are about the 7th sole that I've had on these boots. And so when I look at these boots, I'm saying, you know what, that represents all the steps that I've been taking to this day, and that's basically what they are. I actually planned to be just bumming around, and I wouldn't mind just spending a moment with my soulmate. I mean, if you want to get a better understanding of where I'm coming from at, is that there's the shoreline on the planet Earth, right? The shoreline that covers there's earth on the earth, and then there's water touching the shorelines. That shoreline on the earth is in a constant state of change. but you can't touch that with mathematics. It's different all the time. And that's kind of what I want to be standing on, and what I am standing on. It's going to be different 1 second to the next. So if you carve something in stone, well, I don't carve things in stone. When that vision said to me, you're about to become something for God, whether you like it or not, I don't think it was because I'm coming into this world with a message. I think it was more like, you're about to get run over by a car, so relax. I don't think the angel would have said, or whatever it was, said to a kid, hey, you're about to get run over by a car in a few years. That's something you're going to have to deal with until it happens. I think I would be pretty a freaky kid if that's what the case was. So I didn't panic in front of the car. Maybe that's the message. Like I said, I sat there in front of the car, felt like not forever, but for like a while, at least 15 minutes, talking to myself. This is a beautiful car. This is what that meant. I wonder what's going to happen now. If there is any message in my story, well, maybe that's it. But I think the other thing, like the two doctors, I think that's what it boils down to. I haven't heard any other near-death experiences like mine. I've heard of being honest. People that have near-death experience are a lot more honest with God when they're talking about religion and God and stuff like that. I mean, they're bold. And I guess it's just because of that brush. Like, you can sit there and say, there's no life after death. This is probably some kind of mental psychosis. Well, that's my life experience and my plan as a young child to get to this day. I mean, life unto life eternal. I've never heard anybody say, I have actually, in near-death experience, there's a few that out there that I have heard of that people are angry at God for putting them back, and that they felt like just handing it back to God. And I can relate to that. It's not a big thing. It's like throwing off a Band-Aid that you don't want on your body no more. That's kind of how it feels. But the spirit was like a robot that sat down for 1,000 years and then just started to move again. You know, the watch in my brain, the ticking. It's nice to have a brain like this, actually. It really is. I'm glad that I fell asleep listening to my Timex watch for a few years. Anything that I experienced is just a mechanism in that watch that just kind of erases, or it's irrelevant. I think that's how I was able to pick up on the mathematical thing of the shoreline. Constant state of change. You can't put anything. You can say, okay, that's what it was, but look how far, even right now, if we say, okay, that's history, and it's gone already. That moment is so far long gone. And I'm not a teacher, not saying that this is the way it is. I come across as a know-it-all, and I get a chuckle out of it because I'm only giving back to you what you give to me. I'm only repeating in my terminology, mental terminology, what you said to me. So how could I be a know-it-all? I've basically just been sitting here, and I want to bum around and see if I can sit down with the girl I'm meant to be with, even not on a sexual level, just to spend a moment with her and move on. That was my plan, but I kept getting rolled. So I'm hoping that this book will give me the finances to do that, or even maybe this B&B. COVID really gave me a tumble. COVID knocked me down a hill. I just kept rolling. I'm human. I've got this flesh. I'm just a ghost that surrounds it, I guess.